Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. And now, your host, Adam Huntsman.
Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. I'm your host, Adam Huntsman, and today we'll be telling you the story of Lane Walter and his hunt for a DIY Alaskan caribou. Okay, welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. This is episode 10, and like I was just saying a moment ago, it is going to be the story of Lane Walter and his hunt for a do-it-yourself caribou in Alaska. And I tell you what, everybody, this is going to be one heck of an episode. I'm really glad that you're tuning in for it. Lane and I go back a ways. We've been friends for, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years now, something like that. Honestly, the time just kind of seems to fly by nowadays, so I'm not quite sure. But either way, we've been friends for a while now, and Lane is... We're just going to go with Lane is a badass. Just to kind of boil it down, he is a firefighting, weightlifting, mountain climbing, bow hunting, big game hunter. And he is no stranger to big game hunting, as he's gone on a ton of hunts already. And I don't think he's that much older than me. And when I say a lot, I mean he's done elk, he's done mule deer, he's been on several sheep hunts, mountain goat hunts, mountain lion hunts, and most recently, he's been on this caribou hunt. So again, just very familiar with big game hunting, and just an absolute wealth of knowledge and stories. So very excited to get him on the show and hear what he has to say about his latest big game hunt. So I'm not going to beat around the bush today because our conversation does run a little bit long. So we're going to hop right into it. This is episode 10, the story of Lane Walter and his hunt for a do-it-yourself Alaskan caribou. Enjoy. Okay, and on the phone with us today is Lane Walter. How you doing, Lane?
Good, man. How you doing?
You can't complain. Just got a fresh cup of coffee sitting here, ready to rock, and I get to chat with you, which is always a pleasure. So I'm excited.
It's always a fun time talking to you, man.
Yeah, it's been too long. But so I was going to say, before we started recording, I went through and kind of gave you a little introduction, and like we always do. But why don't we go ahead and start off, with you telling the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, what kind of hunting you do, all that fun stuff.
Well, my name is Lane Walter. I live in Loveland, Colorado, and I've been a big game bow hunter for 10 years now. I actually started archery as a competitive archer, and then as soon as I found bow hunting right out of high school, I was hooked, and I stopped shooting tournaments. So kind of did it backwards. A lot of guys start hunting and then, get in the tournament, make themselves better, and I was the exact opposite. I started punching paper when I found out I could shoot it, like real things, bring meat home. I was hooked and get just that close and intimate with animals. I started filming for Outback Outdoors 5 years ago, I think. 4 or 5 years ago. Trevin and Dustin taught me everything I know about running a camera, and that's actually how I met you. I didn't know who you were. I picked you up at a parking ride. So I don't know who was more crazy, me or you, when we met at a parking ride, and then we got in the truck and rode together for 4 hours to get to the film school.
Dude, I remember that. That's so funny because I remember I think I had the same thought process where okay, I get off the plane, I'm on that shuttle over to the parking lot, and I'm like, well, I hope this works out well for me, because if not, I am on my own here. So.
I think you were more crazy than me, because I at least had a gun in my seat in case you were nuts. But
yeah, I was.
You just got off a plane, so I was banking on you didn't have much, so I wasn't that worried about it.
Yeah,
but I knew Trevin vouched for you, so that's all it takes for me. If he vouches for anybody, that's all it takes for me.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I wasn't that worried. But it was fun. It was definitely a little weird situation, but hell, by the time that we got there, man, we were good buds.
Oh, hell yeah, man. 4 hours in the truck talking about hunting, doesn't take too long to bond over that kind of stuff.
Don't forget getting pulled over.
Oh, I don't. I definitely remember that. You got out of that too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, it worked out.
I love Wyoming State Troopers.
Oh, that was so funny. I think I saw a selfie of that somewhere with the lights kind of going off in the background of us, but.
I had to do another one in Wyoming this year, going up to film Brian Barney from Eastman's. I got pulled over. I made it a little bit further into Wyoming than 5 miles, but still, I got pulled over. So that might have been that one too. So
could have been. Yeah, could have been. I was gonna say, if you just keep doing it, you'll just get further and further. Eventually, you won't have to worry about it.
I just need to keep my cruise control. I turn my cruise control off for like a minute, and then my foot's on the gas pedal.
Yeah, it's so easy out there. It's so not too many sharp turns in the road or anything. It could feel like it's easy to kind of lose how fast you're going. But
so that's my intro, dude. I'm a bow hunter, and apparently I speed a lot. So
we'll put that in the show notes. But on top of being a
cool offender,
yeah. So after that, we'll on top of being the speeding bow hunter, like you said, you're a big game hunter. You've done a ton of big game hunts. And what was it? Last year you went on a Alaskan Caribou hunt, and that's the story we're going to be going over today, correct?
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So, first of all, Alaska, was this, I'm assuming, I know somebody be playing a lot of devil's advocate here, or just kind of pretending like I don't know, but as far as Alaska, this was your first time, right?
No, it was my second time. So my very first year bow hunting, well, no, it was my second year bow hunting, but my first year dating my now wife, I'd been dating Becca for like 3 months, and her dad met me and found out I bow hunted, and then said, well, let's go to Alaska. I was, all right. I was 19, young and dumb. So a couple months later, I'm in Alaska with my girlfriend's dad and my girlfriend and a couple of his buddies, and we were hunting black bears on Prince of Whale Island.
Oh,
and that was fun. So this was my second time in Alaska, but that's southeast Alaska, and I was in like north Alaska this time. So two completely different parts of this state. It's basically two different countries if you look at the terrain and just the temperatures and everything that happens. It was cool.
I can imagine. So then, if you're comparing north to south, just terrain wise, what's north, what's south, what's the temperature difference?
North, it's barren ground, and you still get trees and you have the hills and stuff where we were at and mountains, but down south it was rainforest. Ketchikan is one of the rainiest places in the world, not the country, but in the world. So it rained on us literally every single day of that black bear hunt. I loved it. My girlfriend, now wife, hated it because by like day 5 of her just being drenched, she was like, "This sucks." But it was a fun time. It was a really fun time.
Oh, I bet.
Did you two polar opposites? Barren ground to rainforest.
Wow.
Cold rainforest.
Wow. And were you guys successful on that trip or no?
On that trip, my wife killed a bear, and another guy killed a bear, and that was it. But the other guy killed a bear with a rifle, my wife did with a bow, so that was cool. I was actually in the water 5 feet from a bear, just looking at him, and I thought, this is really cool. He was a smaller bear, and I decided not to shoot him. I just sat there and watched him, and he watched me, and if he wanted to charge me, I would have been screwed because my gun was in my backpack, and all I had was my bow, but it was awesome. Totally amazing experience just standing there in the middle of a river looking at a black bear like 5 feet away from you, and he's just looking at you like, "What are you, dude?" Yeah. I'm like, "I know what you are," but it was totally awesome, and he finally just got bored looking at me and walked off. It was awesome.
Wow, dude, that is awesome. I had a couple not close calls, but like close encounters like that. Same thing whenever I was up in Canada, and like the one we were just hunting them on the ground, and it was ridiculous. Where it was the same kind of thing where like they'd come in and they'd be smaller bears and everything. So, and again, I'm behind the camera, so it's like I don't really have a say in the matter either way. But just watching them out there that close, man, that's just you don't obviously always don't. Let me start over. You obviously don't always have to pull the trigger in order to enjoy it. So that's awesome.
No, and I'm going to remember that moment for the rest of my life, probably more so than if I'd shot a black bear on that trip. Like if you could let me go back in time and say, "Hey, you can shoot that big black bear where you screwed up not shooting, or you can have that experience," I'm going to take that experience that I had in the river every single day of the week.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know how many people can tell that kind of story,
Exactly. I tell that story, and people like at the fire department stuff, their eyes still get huge. They're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "He just walked off. He got bored." It was awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Totally cool experience.
Yeah. And now kind of transitioning back, because I'm sure we could probably do an episode just on that bear hunt, but back to caribou. Now, again, so this is your second time in Alaska, first time hunting caribou. What?
First time actually float planing into a camp. On the other trip, we float planed over to the island, but we landed. truck. We'd hike in every day. But this time we got the bush plane and we flew in 100 miles and we were dropped off and it was like, hey, if something happens, you're on your own. So yeah, definitely the first time doing that. It was cool.
That is awesome. Yeah. So just tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, because it's funny. I have a million questions every time. Like you say something, I'm like, I have a million other questions I want to ask. But why don't we just kind of go down that route? How does that whole deal work? I mean, I'm assuming you had to go through and book someone to fly you out there. I mean, how does that process even work? Is it just literally like a word of mouth kind of thing, or?
It was a do-it-yourself hunt, and my buddy Ed had done the hunt. Actually, it's my father-in-law's really good buddy. They grew up together out in California. He's a huge bow hunter, huge into Pope and Young and stuff, and he does a ton of research and finds these really cool hunts. And we always do it-yourself hunts. We never use guides. It's just I don't have anything against a guy to hunt. I just can't afford it. So if I'm going to do something cool, it's got to be do-it-yourself for a third of the price so that I can actually go out and do it. And Ed's the same way. He'd just rather go do it on a DIY, do the research and make it happen. So a lot of this research of the area came from our buddy Ed. He had done it the year before. They'd gone up and 4 guys tagged out or was it 3 guys tagged out in 48 hours? It was a ridiculous.
Wow.
Or maybe 4 guys in 48. I think they called it 4 and 48. But yeah, their camp, they got flown in and they all tagged out on trophy bulls. I think Ed's was a Boone and Crockett bull with archery tackle in 48 hours. So we had talked to him a little bit, and you got to book your bush plane with these guys for a year in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So we were already planning, talking about doing it and stuff. So the time came up, and we called, and then we finally got through. And they're like, okay, we got like 2 spots left. What days do you want? We got 2 dates left. You can fly out on this day, or you can fly out on this day. So we picked the date that they had left, which was earlier than what we wanted to. So we were going to be chasing bulls in the velvet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we picked that. And then a year later, got an airplane here in Colorado, flew out to California, met up with their buddy Mike, and then we all flew from there straight up to Anchorage, and then drove north for 9 hours.
Phew. Yeah,
it was fun. It was closer to flying to Fairbanks, but getting rental cars and stuff like that. All the logistics is a lot easier out of Anchorage, so we decided just to fly into Anchorage and then just drive past Fairbanks on the way up.
I get you. You had said that Ed was there the year before and he had tagged out. Is this one of those deals where it was you weren't going with just Ed, right?
No. And Ed didn't go with on this trip. Ed just told us about it and told my father-in-law about it. And we were like, all right, cool. You mind if we go up there? And he gave my father-in-law the go-ahead. So we all went up there. And so it was me, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and then our good buddy Darren, who we elk hunt with here all the time, and then our good buddy Mike Shrosby, who we hunt with all the time and go fish with a lot. So,
gotcha. Okay.
There was 5 of us on the trip. It was a good time. My buddy Santino was supposed to go, and then like a week before the trip, his wife had a medical complication, and so he had to back out and couldn't go, which was a huge bummer. But it all worked out.
Well, again, at least. Sorry, you still there, Danny?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought we cut out for a second. But yeah, okay. So kind of stepping back a little bit, having to book your plane a year in advance. First of all, what made you want to go and hunt caribou in the first place? And then again, what was the first thing you kind of did after you kind of made that decision? Was it literally booking the float plane? Was it getting your licenses? Or just why don't you tell us a little bit more about that process?
So, basically, if you throw an adventure hunt at me, I'm going to do it if I can make it work. As far as dollars and cents goes, I just love getting out. My favorite hunts are bighorn sheep hunts, which to me, because of the biggest adventure, the biggest physical demanding hunt that I can find. So when I think of Alaska, that's all I think about is adventure. I'd been up there 9 years prior, and it was nothing but adventure and fun. And so I figured, why not take it a step further? So when my father-in-law mentioned it to me, I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And actually, I had to tell him no at first because my second son was going to be due in June, and we were hunting in August. So my wife would be at home with a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old.
Ooh.
And so for Christmas, then he gave me a little thing saying, hey, we're going caribou hunting. And I was like, I already told you I can't do this. He's like, no, that's your present. As I talked to Becca, and I talked to Becca, and she said that you can go. So he paid for part of my bush. I think he paid for all my bush plane to go. Actually, that was the present for Christmas. Is he paid my portion of the bush plane, or paid like half of it, and I had to pay the rest when I got up there. but he paid a good chunk of it for me to go, which is awesome.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a hell of a Christmas present.
He wanted, in his words, he wanted a young buck to go, me and my brother-in-law to go pack out the caribou for him, and that kind of worked out. My brother-in-law was stuck packing a lot of caribou while I was still hunting.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys took a couple caribou while you were up there, huh?
All 5 guys tagged out in 5 days.
Whew, that's insane.
So the first 3 guys tagged out in the first 24 hours we could hunt, because you land and you can't hunt for 24 hours. And then after that, the next morning, woke up, had some coffee, hung out, and they had got my father-in-law, Darren and Greg, had all got in there before myself and Mike. So we flew in. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit on the story, but yeah, they all tagged out in the first 24 hours we could hunt, which was sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. And don't worry, we'll definitely let you kind of jump into the hunt here shortly, because I know I'm antsy to hear more about it. I've caught. I kind of mentioned it earlier in the intro that I'd seen some of the footage from this hunt, and I was really excited to kind of dive in and get more of the details. So I can't wait to hear more about it. So we'll definitely get there in a second. I did just want to cover a little bit more of the pre-work kind of going into the hunt as well. And again, for anybody that doesn't know, Lane is how do I want to say this? He's one of those fitness guys that will run to the top of the mountain, So, I mean, as far as like kind of getting ready for this hunt, were there any outside of the, maps and scouting and all that, the normal stuff, was there any type of things that you had to do specifically to prepare for this hunt? And then at the same time, was there anything that you did specifically to train for this hunt, depending on how the terrain was going to be?
No, I stick to a pretty strict routine anyway. I got to be able to do a bunch of flights of stairs at work with full bunker gear and stuff, because I'm a firefighter in Denver and we got a lot of high rises. Mm-hmm. I'm expected to carry 100 pounds worth of gear up to like the 60th floor if I have to. It's one of our tallest buildings at the fire. So I try to stay pretty good on top of that anyway, and I do the train to hunt events and stuff like that. This year I'm going to do the Alpha Bow Hunting Challenge and just try and stay on point all year round so that I can go and do anything. So if somebody calls me, hey, I need you to go film this hunt down in New Zealand, I could have 2 weeks notice. In 2 weeks, I'm not going to be able to do anything. So I just try to stay at the top of my game as much as possible throughout. And I always ramp it up come July, August. I'm ramping it up anyway to get ready to chase elk up and down the hills. But for the most part, I just stay on top of it.
Cool. Yeah, no, that makes
nothing special for that one. I'm definitely doing a little bit more special stuff right now because I'm going back to Alaska for a moose hunt. And if I get one of those down, if me and my buddy Lance, it's going to be a little bit more difficult and a little bit more meat. So definitely put a little bit more focus on the legs right now than what I normally do.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. A little bit more meat, like you said, with the moose. Then as far as the other prep, again, you think of Alaska, and I mean, at least for me, like if I think about trying to go to Alaska, to me, right off the bat, it's kind of like one of those, that's kind of like that next level up, like you said, it's an adventure hunt. You're getting dropped, 100 miles away from, everybody else. You're basically on your own. How did you go about actually preparing for this? Like, so say if like one of our listeners or anybody, is thinking about doing one of these hunts, what would be one thing that you would recommend is to kind of, that they would do to kind of prepare themselves for it?
I think the biggest thing that a lot of people overlook is the mental game. And I can see how really easily, if you're back 100 miles, they can't come pick you up for at least 24 hours. Something happens unless it's like a true emergency. You're out there by yourself. It's that mental game. And the only way that you can really build your mental game is by putting yourself in tough situations and uncomfortable situations. So I'm always trying to find a way that I can put myself in a more uncomfortable situation and try to make it kind of relevant. I'm not going to go out and just do stupid stuff where I can get hurt just to do stupid stuff, but something where I'm making like split-second decisions. I do that at work all the time anyway. Mm-hmm. But right now, getting ready for this moose hunt, I'm going to be on a raft, floating down 100 miles. I'm not good on a raft. I've barely been on a raft. So part of it this year is leading up to it. I'm going to be in a raft a lot this summer, getting used to rowing and stuff. But then another part of it, if I go in, the water's going to be about 40 degrees. So I'm sitting in an ice tub at least once a week. And one, it's good for my body. It's great for recovery. I started doing it for recovery, but at the same time, it's got to do a purpose. If I get dunked in that water on that hunt, my body's not going to freak out and be like, oh my God, we're in 40-degree water. It's going to be like, hey, we've been here before. And I'm at the weird point in my mental game where I look forward to this ice bath at least once a week. It's a treat for my body and for me to get in this ice bath. It helps me focus. It helps me breathe. And I sit in it for 10 to 15 minutes every day. And just relax. So every chance I get, I'm getting into that water, put myself in an uncomfortable situation. So building the mental game is huge and finding ways to do that. If you're sitting at a desk all the time, you got to be able to find a different way to make yourself uncomfortable.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like you said, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So that makes all the sense in the world to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I tell you what then, let's we'll put the hunt prep and all that aside. Let's start diving into the hunt. So, again, you've flown up to what you said, Anchorage, right?
Yeah, we flew into Anchorage.
Okay. Yep. So you flew into Anchorage.
So by the time we landed at Anchorage, we've been traveling with our layover and stuff. We've been traveling for right at like 12 hours or something like that. So not a lot of travel, but quite a bit of travel to get there. So we landed at Anchorage, went and got the rental van, and then after we got the rental van, we went and got the sat phone, and then we stopped at Walmart and just loaded up on the food that we still would need, because we didn't fly with all the food that we needed. We flew with some food, but we knew that Anchorage is a city. We can get basically everything we need, so we bought a lot of our food up there instead of paying to fly it up there.
That makes
loaded up
smart.
the van, and then drove 9 hours north, and got in there, checked in with the bush pilots that night, went to bed, and then woke up the next morning, and they said, be ready because you're the first group going out, because the other guys didn't prepare. They were coming before us. They flew into Anchorage that afternoon and thought it was just going to be a quick little drive up there, and they didn't get in there to check in. So she said they're going to have to wait until tomorrow or the next day to fly out, and we're flying you guys in. So it was kind of nice, because we were planning on flying out that next afternoon, but she's like, we're bumping you to the front. So it was cool. We were on top of the game, prepared, so we got in a little bit earlier than what we were planning on. So that was nice.
Nice. How long were you flying back? Like, how long did it take to get there?
It took just a little bit over an hour. The plane I was riding in was going like, 80 miles an hour.
Okay.
So it took a little bit over an hour. Most guys were flying in a Cessna, and they flew into like a hub and then got in the bush plane, and we're only in the bush plane for like 15, 20 minutes. But me, being the lucky guy I am, and I drew the straw where I flew in a tiny little bush plane all the way in. So I was crushed in that little thing for over an hour, and at the end, after looking at my camera lens or looking at the camera screen and looking out, I almost got sick. And I had to tell the guy, I'm like, hey man, you got something I can puke in if I'm not feeling so hot? And he was like, oh yeah, in the back seat there. And I was like, dude, there's nothing behind your seat for me to puke in right here. And so then he started to get a little worried, and we did a dive bomb landing. We landed pretty quick.
Oh,
right after that. So it was fun.
Oh, I can imagine.
I usually don't get motion sickness, but between looking at my camera lens and like the little movement of the plane, it got to me, and it was I was like, dude, my mouth is watering bad. We're gonna have to do something. And so I was just watching the horizon, just trying to stabilize myself to where it didn't happen. So that was a fun little way to kick off the trip.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Reminds me of the first time I went walleye fishing on Erie. I go out having a great time. I'm little 10-year-old Adam's out there catching fish, and then the boat starts kind of getting to you a little bit, and then similar situations arise. So we'll just leave it at that, though.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay.
So after that, for the rest of that day, all we did, it was a pretty relaxed day. Yeah. We knew all we had to do was get camp set up because we couldn't hunt. So we got camp set up. In the middle of setting up camp, we have caribou just walking all around us, and we're like, man, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah,
and it was great. They set us up. A lot of guys, depending on what ridge you go to, you get set up on a huge ridge, and you got to hike like a mile or two down into the river to get water and stuff. And luckily, where we got dropped, we were right next to a river. So we had a 200-yard hike to get over to the water and get our fresh water for cooking and stuff with. Mm-hmm. So that was nice.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we just got camp set up that day, ate a great meal, drank a little whiskey, and went to bed, and didn't set any alarms because at that time when we were up there, it was long days. I think the sun would go down around 11:30 or 12 o'clock and then be up by 4. So it really wasn't getting that dark.
Right.
And we weren't going to set our alarms for 4 a.m. and we couldn't hunt until about right at the noon mark anyway. So we just said, hey, let's just relax.
Yeah.
And
so there's
cooked a nice breakfast and then started glassing and deciding where we were going to start hunting at for that day when we started hunting.
Gotcha. So now again, you couldn't fly, or I know you can't hunt for 24 hours whenever you're flying into Alaska. Yep. You said you couldn't hunt till noon. Is that? I mean, Are there different like times for different species? Do you know, or is are there any kind of weird regulations?
As far as I know, it's 24 hours, and so we just noon is about when.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Had landed. Randy,
Gotcha.
Darren, and Greg had all landed, and then Mike and I didn't land till like 1 or 2 or something. So we said, "Hey, you guys are hunting first anyway." I wanted to capture a lot of the stuff on film.
Yep.
So I was planning on letting them hunt as much as possible anyway. I still had my bow with me all the time, but I was running my camera as my primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
So.
God, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't
that way.
Yeah, no, I just wasn't sure if it was like one of those things where like you can only hunt like turkeys until noon, or you can only hunt them like after a certain time.
It was just they don't have a time. It's just you got to have sufficient light.
Sure.
In most spots, but it was the 24-hour rule that was getting us to where we couldn't hunt.
Gotcha. Yep. No, it makes total sense. Okay. All right. So then it's noon. You guys are going out hunting. Why don't you take it from there? And again, you're in camp with several other guys. Was this one of those deals where you guys kind of broke up and kind of all did your own thing? Did you stick together in little groups, or how did that work?
Well, on the first one, we were all just sticking together, thinking, "Hey, we'll just stay together on this and try and figure it out." Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we did. Randy had spotted this great bull, just an awesome bull, and so actually, first what happened was Greg had spotted a bull. We went and put a stock on that. Most guys hung back a little bit and got within about 50 yards, and he just caught some of our movement, blew out. So then we went back to camp, and we're just messing around a little bit, glassing some more, and then Randy spotted this huge bull, and we started stocking up on that. And this time we split up. Me, Randy, and Darren went together, and then Mike and Greg went off to the side, and we ended up all meeting back together because the bull made this big circle and looped around. And so we were all together when Randy shot him, which was cool. We all hung back around the 50-yard mark, and then Randy snuck in to like 20 yards and just thumped this bull, just this massive bull, and went down. It was kind of cool. Randy, the glue that like keeps the whole group together, that like everyone knows who Randy is, and we all know each other because of Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was cool to see him go and tag out first.
Oh, yeah.
And then we spent the rest of the night getting that ready. He didn't shoot it till the evening time. And then the next morning, woke up, and Mike and I split off one way, and Darren and Greg went out the other way, and Randy was working on his cape. And
mm-hmm.
So by this day, this is our second day back in there.
Okay.
Second full day back in there.
Gotcha. And I was going to
second morning, first actual morning that we could hunt because of the 24 hours.
Right.
And so Mike and I are sitting there, and Darren and Greg, or we could see him, and then we see a bull between us, and then the bull comes in beds like 80 yards from where Mike and I were at, and then we see Greg coming over here because they had watched him, and so Greg we're set up on the other side of the canyon, and Greg goes in and just sticks the bull at 40 yards, and then the bull runs out to like 110 yards.
Jeez.
And Greg put another arrow right into him at 110, just smoked him.
Wow. And now is this...
And so then he didn't go very far, bedded down, and we're sitting there, and we're taking care of Greg's bull, and we look up, we're like, hey, there's another bull. And about 500-600 yards away, there's this bull that comes down off the mountain and just beds down right in front of us, like 600 yards away. So we're sitting there like, man, who should go shoot it? Because it was a great bull. Like, who's going to go shoot it? And we're all sitting there, and Darren's like, I'll do it then. All right, cool. So Darren goes. We're still working on Greg's bull, and I have the long lens set up, and I filmed Darren stocking in on this bull. And when he's about 20 yards away, the bull just stands up and starts shaking because the flies are so bad, and starts running to get away from the flies, and just runs right at Darren. And Darren has to balk at him to get him to stop or to slow down, and puts an arrow in him at 10 yards.
You said 10 yards.
Hours,
wow.
In the first 24 hours, 3 caribou were down. So the rest of the day was just basically spent taking care of their meat, getting it set up, and packing the meat a little bit.
Yeah.
So the next morning,
Greg,
well,
I was going to say, Lynn, let me
pack meat.
Yep.
You're good.
Yeah, I was just saying, sorry to cut you off. There's a million questions I got here for you before we get into bulls, 4 and on. So again, like right now, you've already got several bulls down. Is this one of those situations where it's literally like, you're glassing up herds of bull, or are they literally kind of more solitary where you're seeing them, like I said, when one comes off the mountain, or like, how is that all set up? Would you mind talking about that?
So Randy's had a bull. It was Randy's bull and then a smaller bull with it. And then we'd see like 3 or 4 cows together, but nothing as far as like a big herd.
Okay.
And then Greg's was by himself, and then Darren's bull was by himself. And for the most part, what we were glassing was like groups of 2 to 3, nothing, no like herds. They hadn't really herded up yet, but they just started moving. And then later on in the hunt, we started to find just a little bit more condensed groups of bulls put together.
Gotcha.
But at this point, all we'd seen was like just sporadic little groups of them.
Okay. Well, you got to figure it's probably made it a little bit easier for you guys to get in on them then, right?
Yeah, it did, because there was less ice to worry about. So that was nice.
Right. No,
it was kind of a blessing and a curse. We weren't seeing as many as what we wanted to, but at the same time, we were seeing enough to hunt, and there was less ice to get in on them, because this is all spot and stock. You're not calling these animals. It's got to be a spot and stock setup. So, or an ambush. A lot of guys will ambush them setting up on the river when they come to drink and find like a big crossing spot. That kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
But definitely not calling or anything like that. Nothing fun.
Yeah, nothing interactive, but
just just spot and stock where you're stocking up on it and shaking and getting all nervous and worried about the shot.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's just a little stock up to a giant, Alaskan caribou. Nothing.
Just a stock up to like a 400-inch animal, 300-inch animal. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, nothing crazy, nothing you can't handle, right?
No, exactly.
Okay, man. You mentioned the bugs. That's always something that I've always kind of been, or I've heard a lot about, just like how bad the bugs are in Alaska when you were hunting. How did you deal with that? Because whenever I was in Canada, it was horrible bugs, and
I had heard stories of guys where they were like the worst thing is ever, man.
Right?
And,
yeah,
like,
they say you just get eaten alive. Yeah.
And we got lucky. We took all these bug nets and all this bug spray and stuff. And basically, as long as we kept ourselves just covered a little bit, they weren't horrible, but they weren't great. So for the most part, we found out if you stayed in a little bit of breezy spot, they wouldn't bug you. And then and we found a lot of caribou that actually stand on like a point where it was breezy, and they'd stay there all day long to stay out of the bugs.
So was that something that you could kind of
staying in the wind? Yeah.
Yeah. So was that something that you could kind of key in on then? Like where you're trying to find an area that, well, I guess you're spot and stalking, but would that be something that you could key in on potentially?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially for like a glassing point. It was nice. Most animals aren't going to stand and like skyline themselves on a ridge on the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
But these bigger bulls would do that just because they could see in all directions and they'd stay out of the bugs.
Huh.
I'm assuming that's what they were doing to stand out of the bugs, because it definitely was an effective technique for it. If you got up on it, just a little bit of a breeze, the bugs weren't bothering you.
Yeah.
So
interesting. And it's funny because it makes so much intuitive sense whenever you say it out loud, but it's not something that you would think of unless you were like actually there, Exactly. Interesting. I was gonna say I had another question too. Now, again, right now you got 3 caribous down. As far as like handling the meat, that's a lot of meat. How did you go about just handling that?
So in Alaska, you got to take like every ounce of meat that you can get.
Exactly.
And that's what we did. We took a lot of meat, we quartered it up, and then just had a bag for all of like the neck meat and all the rib meat, and then put the tenderloins in with that too to make that a bag. And then took everything to the airstrip, and we called the bush pilots, and they actually flew in and picked it up and took it back to their airport, and they had a cooler there. It wasn't a freezer, but it was a cooler where it kept the meat cool enough for a couple days.
Gotcha. So
and they would hang it up in there for us.
So then, whenever they were flying in, how long would it usually take? I mean, you guys killed pretty quickly. Is this like were they flying in like the next day?
We called them that day, that night that Randy killed. We called them that day, and they didn't come until the day after everybody else killed. So like the third day, they flew in and picked it up.
Oh, okay.
So until then, we just had it hanging in the shady trees, and it was nice. It was cool enough to where we didn't have to worry about it going bad.
Nice.
If it had gotten really hot, we would have just dumped it in the river. We would have put it in like a plastic bag once the heat was out of it.
Yep.
And then put it in the river to keep it cool.
Yep. No, that's good thinking. Did you? I'm assuming you guys ate some of it then.
Oh yeah, we started cooking that stuff right after we got Randy's down. So.
I bet. Yeah. How was that?
Oh, it was awesome. It tasted great. I put it right up there with elk. It's a really good tasting meat.
Oh, jeez, that's. Whew. Comparing it to elk, man, it's got to be good then. And again, this is.
I've heard if you get like a ruddy bull, it's not as good.
Yeah.
But these guys definitely weren't rutting. They were still all in velvet, so it was really, really good meat.
Nice. No, Very cool. All right, then. So I tell you what, then we'll get back to hunting then again at this point. You've got your 3 bulls down. Go ahead and take it from there.
So yeah, we got 3 bulls down, and that next day, Mike and I went off to go hunt in Glass, and Darren, Randy, and Greg went off and started packing meat. So Randy's plan of having me there to pack meat didn't work out so much for him, but I sure Greg picked up a good section of that for him. And basically that's what they did all day. And then Mike and I got into a spot. It was a super windy, nasty day. Or no, actually, the third day, we didn't see anything. It was like the faucet turned off. And by 5 o'clock, we were back at camp, like getting ready to start opening the whiskey bottle and just calling it for the day because we really hadn't seen that many bulls to stock or anything or that many caribou. And we're sitting there at camp and we just see this bull like 400 or 500 yards away, and it is a giant. And so Mike is the one that spotted it. He's like, "Let's go." I said, "All right, cool." So I grabbed the camera, strapped my bow to my pack, and said, "Hey, this is your bull. I'm just going to come with the camera, and if like something happens and he runs me over, I'll shoot it. But until then, it's yours." He spotted it, and that's kind of how we were planning on hunting anyway.
Yep.
So he goes after this bull, and we got to like the 70-yard mark. We were standing there, and I stayed back, and Mike went up, and it was a high pressure, like it was a fast stock, man. This bull was moving, and he knew something was around, but he didn't know like what it was. He wasn't like super skittish, so it was like kind of a pushy stock, and Mike got into a spot where he took a 45-yard shot and didn't see a branch, and his arrow put the branch and just went below the thing. So that was a bummer. And at that point, we're like, all right, let's just go back to. We saw him hike up this mountain that we hadn't been to, and we're like, all right, we can go back to camp. And we were talking about going back to camp, and we said, screw it, let's just hike up this mountain and see what's up there. And we got to the top, not quite to the top, but to the top of this ridge, and we were glassing this valley that we hadn't seen, and it was just full of 20 bulls. But by this point, it was getting too late to go put a play on. So we're like, all right, tomorrow we're going in there.
Yeah.
So I wake up on the 4th morning, and it's just raining and nasty and cold. And so we get up there to the point, and we don't see very many bulls down there like the day before. The day before, there was like 20 bulls in there, like huge, awesome bulls in there, and we see like 2 now. So we're like, all right. So we get down there, and we get to where the bulls were, and they were gone. So we just start hiking down that valley, and we get about 2 miles into the valley, and we finally see some nice bulls bedded, get to a spot, and finally have a bull feeding across at 40 yards. Mike and I both drop back on it, and Mike gets his pin on him first, gets it settled, shoots, makes a great shot, and the thing runs off, and we chased him 2 miles back out of the valley and spotted the bull again walking across the ridge, just walking like nothing had happened. And so I have no idea what happened with that bull. I've been told before that these animals are kind of weak, but Mike put an awesome shot on that bull, and it didn't die. I will tell you right now, that thing was still walking around when we left. That bull didn't die. It was crazy. The way he was acting, he wasn't even acting hurt. And we saw blood on his side where he shot, like right where you would put, like if you could go put that arrow in, I might have moved it forward maybe 2 inches, but other than that, it was for the angle that he shot it at. Yeah, I would put it exactly where he put it, and sometimes it just happens that way. And so he was pretty sick to his stomach about not getting that bull. So we chased that thing all day, followed it all day, stalked it all day, and kept stalking it up and over the ridge. I hiked to the top of about 1,000 to 2,000 foot elevation, following that bull, and I got up there. He was gone. There was no sign of him. Like it just happens that way. So Mike was feeling pretty sick to his stomach about it.
Sure, no, understandably. As far as
I'll guarantee you that bull was still walking around when we left.
Huh. As far as the vitals, Lane, comparable to like a whitetail or an elk or something like that. I mean, is it similar, or is there like some slight nuances to it?
It's similar. Everything that I looked at, it was basically similar, just a little bit smaller than an elk, and their body size a little bit smaller than an elk. So bigger than a big whitetail buck, and smaller than your average size elk.
Okay, gotcha. Jeez. All right. So that's that's the 4th day, right?
And we're starting to feel a little bit of pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
So we hike back up to that point, and it's this nice aspen. It's almost like hunting high country muleys. This is the kind of country we're in, like getting above tree line. And Mike and I are sitting there glassing. We see these 2 huge bull moose, just huge bull moose, and then behind them is another big caribou that Mike spotted. So Mike goes down, starts stalking them, walks past these bulls at like 20 yards for the moose, and then gets to where that caribou was, and the caribou had already left. He got up and just left. These things have no rhyme or reason about how long they're going to stay bedded.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Mike's
it seems like they're
on the side of the ridge. You stay on that side of the ridge, and we were just planning on staying there all day. And around probably 4 or 5 o'clock, I look down in that valley again, and there's 2 bulls that come in and just bed down. Or it was probably 3 o'clock when they bedded down, and it took me 2 hours to convince myself to go down there and put a stock on them, because usually they bed down for like 30 minutes and then leave.
Yeah.
It's going to take me over an hour to get down there. So by the time I talked myself into it, 2 hours had lapsed. I get down there, and I get up on this little ridge, and I see them stand up and just start feeding. And they were feeding away from me. I was like, great. I get all the way down here. Should have come down here earlier. And so I coyoted these guys, coyoted them, and they'd go over this ridge, and I'd run like full-out sprint to get to the next ridge, and they'd pop up by the time I'd get there, and I'd have to wait for them to feed over the next ridge, and then I'd sprint to the next ridge. Just closing the gap, closing the gap, closing the gap on them.
Yeah.
And I got to where I was at 90 yards. I had them ranged at 90, and a cow and a calf came up and met up with them, but they're feeding towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sat there and I watched them for probably 45 minutes. They finally turned, went over the next ridge. I sprinted up, came around the hill, ranged the tree at 50 yards, drew back, walked around, saw the bull that I wanted to shoot, thought he was at 50 yards, and shot at him and went right over his back.
Oh, no.
Guessed wrong with the yardage. He was closer than what I thought, because I ranged it later. And the cow and the calf, they boogied. Like, they crossed the river, and they're standing there looking at these 2 bulls like, what happened? But since my arrow went over the back and crashed behind them, they all thought something was coming from over there. So they were all looking at where the arrow crashed instead of at me.
Yeah.
And so they just sat there not knowing what was going on, not knowing what was going on. After about 45 minutes, they calmed down and just started feeding down towards the river. But I didn't have any cover to really stalk them in. I just had like little 2-foot tall branches. So I just started belly crawling in these branches or these bushes, belly crawling until I got to a spot where I was 69 yards and I was busted. And the one started to take off, and the other one stood back and looked at me a quarter away, and I just put a 69-yard shot on him and found my arrow through his heart.
Wow.
It was a really great way to make up for that 45-yard miss.
Yeah, I was going to say it was
whatever it was. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Was that the same bull that you had shot over previously, or was that the other one? Yep. Same one.
Nope, same bull I shot over. They were both huge, great looking bulls. I would have been happy with either one of them, but this one was just a tick bigger.
Gotcha. Jeez. Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, I remember, it's funny. I remember whenever you were on this hunt, following along with you on Snapchat, and like, again, like through like the long drive and everything. And then I remember you actually posting up pictures of the bull, and I was like, wow. I mean, it's just massive, and it's all velvety, and it's, again, it's just the scenery is just beautiful, and it's just, yeah, it just blows my mind every time I think about it. It's just kind of like, it's just a crazy looking, cool looking animal.
Oh, thanks, man. There was no doubt in my mind when I thought that I was shooting him. I would have shot him the first day. Like, he was just an awesome bull.
Oh, yeah. Now, I was going to say, now, so you saw the moose and the caribou, and again, we're talking about how cool looking the caribou are. Did you guys get to see any other kind of cool wildlife while you were up there?
Just the moose and the caribou, really, man. That's about all we saw. Flying in that first time, the bush pilots saw a grizz around where our camp was, and that was about it. But we didn't see him. So I guess when the planes landed, he ran off a couple miles over a ridge, so we never saw him again. Crazy thing, though, when I went to gut up my caribou, because at this point it was like 11 o'clock, starting to get a little dark. I wasn't going to have enough time to quarter him up. So I went up and I gutted him. I went to gut him, that something had taken a bite out of the rear hindquarter and was all scabbed over and stuff. So either a wolf or a bear had actually bit this guy trying to kill him and eat him. And he got away, which was just crazy to see. I got some pictures. I'll try and send them over to you. You can post them, or I still haven't posted them on Instagram. I need to, because it was just a crazy, weird, just huge scab or something taking a bite out of his hindquarter.
Wow, that's insane. Like, I mean, you know, well, yeah, I'm kind of speechless, honestly. That's just a really unique story.
It's funny, and for me, it just like cemented the fact, like, life in the wild, it's do or die, and these animals aren't going to die of old age. They die from getting eaten.
Yeah.
And for my arrow to put him down, and literally he went down in less than 10 seconds. He was done.
Yeah.
And you give me the choice between that or a pack of wolves, I'll tell you what I'm going to pick all day long. And guarantee you, if an animal comprehend that, they would pick that as well. So
Yeah.
it was kind of just a little reminder of, hey, it's wild out here, and when you get weak, you get eaten. So
yeah, and like you said, it's it's not if it's not if you die, it's just when you die, and like you said, I would much.
It's not if you get eaten; it's when you get eaten.
Yeah, exactly. Much
animals.
better. Yeah, much better analogy. And like you said, I'd much rather take an arrow over getting eaten by a grizzly or wolves or freezing to death. Like you said, it's definitely
exactly.
Definitely seems a lot better.
Starving to death from the winter, from everything freezing over and stuff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, now, what kind of? And again, you were talking earlier about like the temperature. If it got too warm, you were gonna dunk or put the meat in the river. On an average day, what was the weather like? Temperature, precipitation, all that kind of stuff. Besides the rain,
average day was 50 degrees, and it would rain in the afternoon.
So it rained every afternoon.
That one day where it got really, really bad and really just rainy and cold and windy and stuff, I think it was really low 40s probably, if I had to put a guess, but that wind just cut right through you. So,
no,
but in between 50 and 60 on an average day, if you were laying out in the sun, it probably felt like it was 60 out of the wind, but 50 and 60.
Okay, nice.
And we were there in the middle of August. It's not like we were there in September at all. It was the middle of August.
Yeah.
So not quite getting to the cold spots yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you had said that you weren't originally planning on going at that time. What kind of time frame do you usually have to look at, what time frame are you usually looking at whenever you're trying to plan a caribou hunt?
Well, you have usually from the middle to the first part of August up through September, and just depending on where your seasons are at and stuff. But most seasons open up the middle of August to the beginning of August and run all the way through October. But then when you get into October, you get into the rut, and if you want to eat these things like you should, then the meat just doesn't get nearly as good. So
gotcha. Yeah, and then they're not
the closer you get to the rut, the worse the meat gets. They get hard horned usually the last week of August, and the bulls were just starting to rub when we were leaving.
Gotcha. Okay. It's kind of interesting that they, it's kind of like for whitetail, you shoot a rutted up buck. Yeah, he's not going to taste as good. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting to me that it's really that noticeable. Like whenever you just taste wise, if you shoot a bull in the rut versus just whenever they're in velvet like that.
Yeah, and I've never had it, but the gal working at the Bush Plain office, she said she was there. She was working because she normally hunts with them, but she didn't book her moose hunting time. And so she's like, I'm not going to go shoot another caribou. But she said that she shot one in the close to October, and it was horrible. And she was asking us when we came back if we wanted all of our meat, because if we didn't want all our meat, she would take some of it because she thinks it's the best meat ever when it's shot in August. So kind of cool to talk to someone who tried it all and actually been through it and was like, yeah, no, this is the best meat at this time.
Nice. Well, at least you got the good meat. I was going to say, we're coming up on time. I know you're busy, so kind of start wrapping it up here. Moving forward, would you go back to hunt caribou, or are you kind of more interested in, like you said, I know you're talking about doing a moose hunt. What's on the horizon for you? What are you planning on doing?
So yeah, I'd go back and do a caribou hunt again. It was a blast. I had a great adventure, but my buddy Mike was actually talking about how he wanted to get on this hunt and kill a bomber caribou so that he could start focusing on other things in Alaska, which is kind of a great way of looking at it. And I hadn't really thought about it until he had mentioned it. But I'm going to be going on this moose hunt, and if I don't see like a big moose, or if I don't see a moose that we can shoot, I'll have no problem. I'll be tickled pink to shoot another caribou. I'd have no problem doing it again. But as far as like booking a strictly caribou hunt, I think the next hunt I'm going to do, Mike's actually doing it this October, and I'll probably do it the year after if it turns out good, is going to Kodiak Island and doing a caribou hunt for a caribou / Sitka blacktail hunt, and focus more on the Sitka blacktails, and then shoot a caribou if I see one to go stalk on.
Awesome.
Like that, but.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be exciting as heck. And then besides the moose hunt this year, what else do you have on the horizon? I mean, obviously tags aren't drawn or anything like that yet, but do you have anything else in the works?
Well, I should be drawing the hardest archery unit to draw in Colorado for deer, but I think think I'm going to put it off this year just because of how much time I'm going to be spending in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to put it in for a point and then draw it next year.
Gotcha. How long?
I think that's kind of what I decided on. It's been 10 years of points.
Whew, long time.
What's 11? You know, so I think I've kind of convinced myself to do that, just because I want to put everything I have towards this moose hunt and get everything ready for it. I leave September 7th for that. So actually, I leave the 6th. So I don't want to take a whole bunch of time before to focus on this 10-year deer hunt. I want to do the deer hunt right.
Yep.
So I'm probably gonna put that off and then just see what happens as far as tags drawn and where I can go film guys. You know how it is. That's the fun part about filming hunts is I get to go do all these awesome hunts that I normally wouldn't get to do, and I get paid to do it because I'm filming it. So
yep.
I'll find some kind of cool hunt to get my way in on and go film. Not quite as cool as the hunt Trevin has going on right now, that muskox hunt.
Yeah, but, man, that's insane. I've been waiting. Like I feel like I'm like refreshing Facebook and Instagram, like probably more than I should, just to kind of see what's going on.
Some kind of update from that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to know. I even if it's just a picture of like where they're at, man. I'm kind of chomping at the bit to just see what's going on. That's just an insane hunt. But I tell you what, he's done some crazy hunts like that. Obviously, he's done the ibex hunt. We haven't mentioned that on the podcast yet, but if anybody hasn't seen it, check out The Rock, an ibex adventure. I believe is what it's called.
Yep.
And
an awesome film.
Yeah,
and just an awesome hunt that most guys don't know is there unless you're a hardcore hunter. Like the hardcore hunters and mountain hunters in the States here know that those guys are down there, and those are who are applying for it every year.
Yep.
So unless you're a New Mexico resident or a hardcore mountain hunter, those guys don't know about that hunt.
Yeah, I certainly didn't until Trevin texted me about it. You know, the same kind of thing was, hey, you know, trying to get everybody together to film this thing, and I had no idea what an ibex was until that whole thing came up. So once you know about it, though,
and neither did I. And now it's definitely on my hit list. That's one of the animals I want to go hunt. I want to go do the ibex in New Mexico at some point with Derek, and I'd like to go do one over in the Middle East as well, or like in Russia or Uzbekistan somewhere. I got a buddy, Brian Reed, who just went over there and killed one, and I am so jealous. It's not even funny. So that's definitely on the bucket list hunt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sometime it's going to happen.
But yeah, I tell you what, then Lane. On that note, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up here? Now, as far as you and your hunts and the things that you're filming, where can we send everybody if anybody wants to go and check out some footage or photos or all that good stuff?
Instagram, and I'm just getting ready to start posting stuff on YouTube and Vimeo. Vimeo's got a lot of my stuff. I'm going to start posting some stuff on YouTube under Lane Walter. It's either Lane Walter or Lane Walter Productions. And then Instagram, just R2Lane at AOL.com. So letter R, number 2, Lane, or type in Lane Walter, and I should pop up on Instagram. Those are the main places. I got a submittal for this Alaska hunt actually into the Full Draw Film Tour. So hopefully check out the video on that if the Full Draw comes near you. And then I'm hoping I get into that. Still haven't heard anything, yay or nay, but either way, if Full Draw comes by you, it's ran by a great group of guys, and just an awesome night of meeting fellow bow hunters and watching some of the best films out there. So I'd recommend going to see that. Even if my film doesn't get into it this year, I'd recommend getting in and watching that if you get a chance to. And the Kuyu Film Festival, I just submitted something last night for the Kuyu Film Festival. So hopefully that little short hunt gets in there. It's actually Mike's hunt from this caribou hunt. Me and him hunted the most together, so he had the most camera time. And the story of 3 and 24 was kind of cool, so I made that into a film, and then I made Mike's his own little film, and I called it Beyond Boundaries, because the other guys were joking around after they all tagged out. They'd tagged out less than a half mile from the airstrip.
Jeez.
And so they were joking around with us that we had a boundary and we couldn't hunt further than a mile from the airstrip. And of course, we both tagged out over 2 miles from the airstrip, and way beyond the boundary that they had set for us. It was probably more like 3 miles. And so it's kind of like an inside joke on the name of Beyond Boundaries. So
I got you.
That's on YouTube. I put that on YouTube. I think I called it Beyond Boundaries, Bow Hunting Caribou in Alaska is what the name of that one is.
Perfect.
Hopefully that makes it to the Kuyu Film Festival, and you can watch it on that too. But
awesome. And I'll definitely link to everything that we can right now in the show notes. So whenever, if anyone wants direct links to any of this, just go check out the huntsmansjournal.com, and, we'll have all that there. So keep it nice and easy for everybody. But I tell you what, Lane, man, thank you so much for coming on the show and, A, telling your story, and B, just sharing all of this information with, me and everybody. I definitely feel like I know a lot more about Alaskan hunting and caribou hunting now, and I just really enjoyed it, man. And, just thank you. Really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, brother. I had a blast.
And so ends episode 10. Thank you again, Lane, for coming on the show and sharing with us all that information about hunting Alaska and, of course, sharing your story with us. I really do appreciate it. And, of course, thank you for listening. So far, we've been getting a ton of positive feedback about the show. So, from what I can tell, it seems to be, being received pretty well. So, if you have taken the time to reach out to me via, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. If you left a rating or review on iTunes and left comments there, it's all very much appreciated. I really am trying to make this show about you guys and kind of keep it facing that way. So any constructive criticism or feedback is always appreciated. So thank you. And on that note, guys, if you are enjoying the show, please do leave a rating or review on iTunes and share the heck out of this podcast wherever you like to hang out on social media. And as always, if you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, or if you'd like to just come on the podcast and tell a story of your own, I can be reached at adam@thehuntsmansjournal.com. And of course, I can also be reached via our website and all the social media channels as well. So that will do it for episode 10. Again, thank you all for joining me today and listening to Lane's story. I know I say it a lot, but I really am just genuinely appreciative for everybody who's tuning in. And as long as you keep enjoying it, I'll keep producing it. So, on that note, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. We'll see you next week.